Okay, here we are. Hi guys, welcome back to Guilt Free Mind. So, the topic of discussion for today is actually PTSD. So, I decided to go with this topic because this is one issue which many people are facing, but they don't really either know that they are dealing with this problem, or they mistake it as being just a common issue and there's no big deal about it. It's just an emotional thing, you can get over it and stuff like that. That is why I decided to go ahead with this topic, because I felt that people need to know what PTSD really is. So let's begin with a simple explanation of what PTSD is.
No, the definition of PTSD is post traumatic stress disorder. Now, post traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition. This is usually and in most cases triggered when a person experiences a terrifying event. Now, that event can include being in an accident, being emotionally abused in previously, or being in a relationship that was traumatic, losing someone, losing a loved one. Grief can cause PTSD. There can be a variety of factors leading to the birth of PTSD in your case, or in the case of someone you know or love. So, what people may experience after they have PTSD is nightmares, flashbacks, severe anxiety, and uncontrollable thoughts. So basically, they cannot get out of that situation where they are stuck in with regards to the PTSD. Once PTSD sets in, it can be pretty difficult to combat and overcome by one's own self. So, this not only the problem is not with the flashbacks, the nightmares, or the anxiety. The problem is that people have difficulty adjusting, not only for months to come, but maybe for years to come. Or even in some cases, if the person has a chronic PTSD condition, it can lead to a lifelong problem in adjustment, day to day functioning, dealing with people, talking to people, even getting out of the house. So, if you go for help, if you ask for help from a psychologist or psychiatrist, there are certain medications that can combat the symptoms of PTSD. Some behavioral therapies are there as well, like CBT and stuff, which can help you overcome the problem. But how do you know if you or someone you suspect really has PTSD? That is what we are going to find out now. So, how does PTSD affect a person's psychology? It's not only about the mind, it's also about the body. So, we all go through short term anxiety experiences. There, some of us have lost people we love, some of us have been through tragic life experience events. Does that mean all of us have PTSD? No. You have trauma from the experience, but eventually, if the trauma fades away, you do not have PTSD. However, if your trauma is continuing after 3 months of the traumatic incidents that you faced, you are still reliving that incident on a daily basis, it's interfering with your day to day life, your day to day functioning, then yes, you do have PTSD in that situation. So, the symptoms of PTSD can last for a longer period than a month. It can even go on for years. If you have chronic PTSD, it can become a lifelong condition under such a uh, problem. If I mean, it can become a lifelong problem if you have a chronic PTSD. So some people have been observed to recover quickly, some people take longer, some people do not recover. So what happens when a person faces PTSD? What does PTSD do to a person? So you must have heard of World War II. I mean, there's no one who hasn't heard of it. In World War II, the soldiers were said to be suffering from shell shock. So that shell shock and the combat fatigue which veterans suffered during World War II did not only last when they were in the war. Even after they came back home, the memories, the traumatic events, those still continued replaying in their heads. That is PTSD. Even now, people who are deployed to other countries, who are a part of the army and have been through really traumatic events, they come back as a different person. They find it very hard to go through their daily lives without support. It becomes difficult because they are constantly reliving their past. This is PTSD. However, this does not mean that only soldiers or people who have experienced war will face PTSD. PTSD can even happen if you've had emotional abuse in the past, you've lost a loved one, you have been in an accident, and a variety of other conditions. Now, women have been observed to be affected by PTSD twice compared to men. So, women are twice as likely to have PTSD compared to their male counterparts. Furthermore, PTSD has been observed to affect people belonging to all ethnicities, nationalities, or culture. So, PTSD does not decide whom to affect, neither does it decide at what age to affect. In US alone, around 3.5% of people have been observed to be suffering from PTSD, which is a pretty high number. And in the world, 1 in every 11 person is a victim of PTSD. Not a good start. So, people who suffer from PTSD go through intense, disturbing thoughts and feelings. The problem is that they keep reliving their past trauma in one way or the other. That is basically the bottom line when it comes to PTSD. Now, the exposure can either be direct, like being in a war, being a part, like being the person who was abused previously, physically or emotionally, being in an accident. However, PTSD can also affect you indirectly. Now, the indirect way PTSD can affect you is if you've heard of someone who died, or police officers who hear of child abuse and what was actually done to the kid. Now, these this information can actually instill images, graphic images in your brain, and that can cause you PTSD. Now that we have discussed what is PTSD, what it does to a person, it is time to discuss what are the signs of someone who has PTSD. Generally, the symptoms of PTSD are of four types. The person may experience intrusive memories, avoidance, negative changes in their thought processes and mood, and finally, physical and emotional reaction changes in such people. Now, let's get into and understand the different details of each of these symptoms. Now, what do I mean when I say intrusive memory? What does that mean? So, intrusive memory means the person will not talk about the traumatic event. The person will try to avoid even thinking about it. Thinking or talking. I mean, people who suffer from PTSD, when they think about the problem, when they talk about the problem, it reminds them of the whole scenario from the start to the end, what happened, how it happened, how they felt. So it's not like taking a trip down the memory lane, it's like taking a trip through your worst nightmare. And that is why they try to block out everything related to the traumatic event, especially their thoughts and memories. And when there is a trigger and when like they start thinking about the traumatic event, they don't get flashes. They most often relive the whole scene again and again, like they are in a flashback. They may dream about the same scene or about scenes indirectly, which still instills trauma. They will suffer from severe emotional distress and physical reaction to anything that might even remind them of the traumatic event. So, suppose let's take an example of someone who's been in an accident. Since you can imagine an accident, there would be loud noises, there would be blood, there would be gross, I mean, the scene would be horrific and gross. So, later, if the person comes across a movie, a person's watching a movie, and in that movie there's a scene where someone's getting into an accident. It becomes difficult to watch those scenes in the movie. It becomes difficult to look at blood. Doesn't matter whose it is. You just cannot look at blood. Sudden loud noises, like someone suddenly clapping too loudly, that can also instill, an adrenaline rush, a fight or flight response, completely throw you off track. So these are some of the feelings that a person suffering from PTSD experiences. Then there's also avoidance. They will avoid any and every situation where they may be reminded of their past or the traumatic event they have experienced. Now, avoidance, the primary symptoms of avoidance is that they will obviously avoid talking about the event, they'll avoid discussing it, they'll avoid, you know, dealing with it, they'll avoid any place which can remind them of that traumatic event. Then they will have negative changes in their thinking patterns and their moods because they're constantly that constant, that constant feeling of avoiding something that puts a lot of pressure on your brain, and eventually that makes the mood really sour. So a person who is constantly trying to evade a discussion, they don't like to, hear how are you doing, how's your day going, are you doing well, because they feel that the other person is trying to tell them that are you okay. If there is that question hidden, they will try to avoid it. And this causes severe anxiety, and anxiety causes depression, mood issues, and everything. Now, coming to mood issues, negative changes in thinking and mood. What does that mean? The person starts to have negative thoughts. This especially happens if the person's been through an emotional trauma previously. They will look at people in a negative manner. They will see people, themselves, the world around them in a negative bubble. They may start hating people, disliking others, not going to parties, not interacting with others because what's the point? I mean, everyone's mean. They're just talking to me because they want something from me. They're not interested in what I have to say or what my opinions are. They only want something. So a person who's been through emotional abuse, who's been manipulated or gaslighted previously, will see others as people who want something from this person. So they will try to avoid talking to people at all. They will feel hopeless about the future because who the hell am I going to spend it with? Who is there who will take care of me? When I grow old, I'll just die alone. And I mean, is there any point to living? Stuff like that. Then there is memory problem. This is actually a defense mechanism that our brain uses to block out traumatic things, because if you keep reliving that trauma again and again, it's only going to have a negative impact on yourself. So, what the brain does is it may completely shut down the traumatic event. You may remember parts of it, you may remember the whole thing, or you may not remember any of it. So, anything can happen. Or, in some cases, it has also been seen that sometimes the brain invents new things that never really happened. So, you may feel that I went through this thing and I went through this and I felt like this and this happened. But what happened may not have really happened. It may have been the way your brain is coping through all of it. That can also happen. Then such people have very extreme difficulty in maintaining close relationships because they don't trust people. They feel that others are out to use them. Others will just use them and throw them away when their work is done. So these negative thoughts make it very difficult to even make friends. Forget being in a romantic relationship in any way. They start to feel detached from their friends, existing friends, family members, because they feel that no one is understanding what they're going through. So, suppose I am a victim of PTSD. I have been through emotional abuse previously for any reason. Suppose I've been beaten up as I was a kid. Let's take a scenario like this. Or let's take a scenario where I have been gaslighted by my partner. So now I will not be able to trust anyone. Because what if this person's only here to take the gains and then leave me? What if this person's only here because of the property I have, or because of the money I have, or just wants to use me because I'm a good empath? No, I'd rather not be there. And when it comes to friends and family, they feel that people just don't understand them. So my parents don't understand me. They say it's a phase. It's not a phase. I've been living through this for God knows how many years, whatever years the person's been living through, and it's not going away. People say do meditation, like it's that easy. I'll just do meditation and no problem will go away. It doesn't go away like that. This is not the solution to any of my problems. Why do people keep giving me suggestions that I cannot even work on? So they start to feel detached. I mean, others mean well, their parents mean well, their friends mean well, but the person is just so detached and in their own bubble, in their own negative shell, that they just cannot allow anyone to enter into their life even. Then there is a lack of interest. Suppose you've had a hobby, you loved sculpting. Now you feel, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to change my life. It's not going to turn my life around. It's not going to make it better. I'm not going to get well. So you stop engaging in the things that you loved. The difficulty experiencing positive emotions. Suppose you meet a person who's really good, understands you, takes care of you, but you're not ready to, let go of your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, or even share one single secret with that person. What if this person's out to use me? What if the only thing that this person cares about is using me, throwing me away, and then I'll again be heartbroken? So it's better not to give my feelings, not to let anyone in. It's just better for me and it's just better for my mental health probably. But it's not. You cannot experience a positive emotion. Even if you feel happy, you will question that happiness because you are waiting for something negative to happen. Feeling emotionally numb. Now, this is when sometimes, I mean, different people react to shock in a different manner. So some people can become numb. They just stop feeling. If there is something good, it's like, okay, yeah, okay, whatever. If there's something bad, it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. I mean, that's the reaction they give to every situation because they just don't feel anything anymore. It's just not there. That feeling that, oh my God, I'm so happy. That feeling is not there anymore. Then there are also changes in physical and emotional reactions. So obviously, loud noise, fireworks, sudden, impulsive decisions by others. Everything that is sudden can set them off track. Even if it's small or if it is big, it doesn't matter. Anything can set them off track and they may get really angry because they are not a fan of surprises. Now, what are the symptoms in the physical and emotional reactions? Some of these I've already covered. Easily getting frightened, always looking out for any kind of danger in their surroundings. Then such people may indulge in self-destructive behavior. They may start cutting themselves. They may attempt to, end their lives. They may even get involved in self-destructive behavior like substance abuse, driving too fast because they just don't care and they just want this whole, facade of life to end. So they just stop caring. They may cross the roads without looking left and right. They may not even wait for the road signs to change and just cross it because if I have to die, I'll die. That is what kind of goes on in such people's heads. They have very difficulty sleeping, a lot of difficulty in sleeping because they are still reliving their past. They are afraid to go to sleep because they might, start thinking about what happened in their past again. Trouble concentrating, of course. If your brain is constantly thinking about one specific thing, it goes on in your head like a loop. You will have difficulty sleeping, you will have difficulty studying, you will have difficulty concentrating on your work. You will also have difficulty remembering things that you have probably learned or you're trying to learn. Then there is angry outbursts, aggressive behavior, irritability. Such people are in a constant fight or flight response, and that takes a heavy toll on both the mind and the body. And because of these factors, these people start to become very easily irritable and they get angry very quickly. I mean, you may not have done anything. They may just they probably just woke up with an angry mood. Nothing you can do about it. Then, if the trauma is related to someone who died, and if this person feels that they could have done something, I should have been there. Maybe this wasn't supposed to be done. Maybe this was supposed to be done this way, that way, something like that. Then there will be overwhelming feelings of shame and guilt in such people. Now, another factor that I have noticed with PTSD is like people think that PTSD only affects adults, and that is so far from the truth. PTSD also affects kids, PTSD can affect kids who are older than 6 years or even younger than that. Trauma can be experienced in every part of your life. You do not have to be of a certain age to experience the trauma. So, in case the trauma is in kids, in case a child is suffering from PTSD, the child may reenact aspects of the trauma via painting, drawing, or even in plays. So, if you are suspecting that a kid may be having trauma issues, go through their drawings, paintings, observe them really closely. Kids give out signs, give out signals that they need help. Now it is up to us to actually understand that. But parents, teachers, people who are around the kids, most often babysitters, they need to be a little vigilant if they are suspecting that the kid is not doing so well mentally. Kids also have frightening dreams about the incident, so this may have the traumatic event in exact same manner, or it may be morphed. Like they may have fallen down the stairs and that may have caused a trauma, but they are seeing a lion in their dream. So if they are having recurrent frightening dreams, it's something of a concern and it should be addressed as soon as possible. Now, coming to the next part of the discussion, how PTSD affects your mind, body, your emotions. So, if it was an emotional abuse, the emotional scars don't go away so easily. If it's a physical one, if you were in an accident, I mean, as long as you're indoors, you are fine, right? But when it's an emotional trauma, whether you're indoors, whether you are outdoors, whether you're hiking, you're on the top of a mountain, those scars don't go away. They are there for life. So, anyone who is suffering from emotional trauma or PTSD, in both the cases, they may exhibit the scars for a period of years, months, or lifetime. Depends on the severity of the trauma and how well they have handled it and coped with it so far. So, one factor that people, think and ask a lot is, okay, fine, you've had emotional trauma. So your mind, you're feeling bad and stuff. But does this mean that your brain is not acting correctly? Because your brain will be okay, right? It's just emotional trauma. I mean, how can that affect your brain? But that's not true, actually. PTSD or emotional trauma, these two can affect the functioning of your brain in a variety of ways. So, trauma has been observed to affect the brain regions that are prefrontal cortex, your hippocampus, and the amygdala. Now, all of these sections of the brain are responsible for regulating your emotion and providing a response to fear. Now, since you are in a constant state of flight or fight, your response to fear, those sections that are supposed to respond to fear, are constantly working. That puts extra pressure on them, and that is why they start to function in a different manner because they have to constantly be vigilant. They are afraid, they are ready for anything to happen at any time. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Traumatic stress has been associated with increased production of cortisol and norepinephrine and cortisol are two hormones that are responsible for dealing with stress, inculcating a fight or flight response in the person. So, studies have also observed that there have been chronic changes, acute as well as chronic changes. Now, if there are acute changes are changes that come for a short term and then go away. Chronic changes are those that can last a lifetime. So, if there is a chronic change or there is an acute change, depending on that, the person's response to the traumatic event will be determined. So, amygdala, hippocampus, and the medial prefrontal cortex are those regions of the brain that are responsible for regulating your stress levels, and they are extremely vulnerable to an overactive stress response, which is exactly what happens in case of PTSD. So, when you have PTSD, it triggers like a feedback loop. So, because you are afraid. Initially you are afraid, so that's putting pressure on your amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and your hippocampus. So these are working very hard. They are working to constantly produce hormones that will keep you, alert and active. Now you are alert and active, and that sends a signal to your brain that you are afraid and you are ready for something to happen. And this further causes these three sections of the brain to keep on releasing more neurochemicals to keep you in that state. So basically, these become overactive. These sections of the brain becomes overactive. Your brain is constantly functioning to keep you safe. Furthermore, along with these issues, people with PTSD also start to experience depression, anxiety, memory issues, insomnia, as I said, trouble sleeping, substance abuse disorder, engage in alcoholism, drug use, other behavior that is generally not accepted by society. All of this because they are constantly in a state of alertness. They're constantly afraid. Imagine being afraid 24/7. I mean, normal people find it very hard to stay afraid for over 10 minutes. I mean, then our body just gives away. And imagine staying afraid 24/7. Your body is constantly in a heightened state of fear and anxiousness. And this is what leads to anxiety. And then people, that constant feeling that no one's understanding me. I'm living in a world where people just don't get me. I will never have anyone who truly figures out who I am and what I am going through. That causes depression. Memory problems because your brain is working so hard to keep you safe that it cannot help you focus on anything else. Then all the other stuffs, the insomnia, the substance abuse, that all substance abuse is primarily because you're trying to escape a situation and getting into another situation. Not a very, amicable situation, but this is what happens. PTSD also takes a physical toll on its victims. So, most often, as I said before, people, when they talk about emotional trauma, they say that it only affects the mind. That is so far from the truth. It does not only affect the mind, it also affects the body. When these hormones, cortisols, when these are released, when adrenaline is pumped through your veins, most of the day you're spending, except when you're sleeping, you're spending most of the day, being in a state of fear, fight or flight. These can also cause pain in your body. Imagine your muscles, every muscle of your body is constantly ready to just go into a fight. What if I fall? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that person says something to me? How do I respond to them? Such people also have a tendency of thinking ahead. This is specifically with those who have experienced emotional abuse. They will go to the point of thinking as to, if I say this to this person, that person will respond in this way, and then I will say this way, and then that person will say this. So they can, make a complete conversation with just one thought. Because their brain has what wired that way so that they can deal with situations that involve people trying to manipulate them, people telling them they're worthless, people telling them that what they did was wrong, and them having to justify their actions at every step of the way. That. Now, when you have, so this was about emotional abuse. They are constantly ready in their minds. If a person has suffered from physical abuse, or, even in case of emotional abuse, that stress comes onto the body as well. So the stress causes muscle contraction. Trauma, fight or flight response, all of these cause muscle contraction because our muscles are getting ready to either leap towards danger or away from it. So in the wild, this would have been an amazing feature to have, but we don't live in the wild anymore. We don't have to bother about, wild animals coming to our doorstep and trying to eat us and stuff like that. But when we go through traumatic events, we still go through the same response as if we were in the wild. You may notice that you are trembling, shaking, you're twitching. These are factors that help the body face a difficult situation. But these factors, if they are on loop, like 24/7, if you are suffering through PTSD, then these factors will have serious effects on the body. Imagine your muscle is in a constant state of contraction. You will have muscle aches.
serious levels of body aches, muscle aches, even like sleeping can be difficult because of your physical problems as well. Then some other, physical conditions that can be associated with PTSD are hypertension, heart diseases, high cholesterol levels. As I said, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is also a chronic pain disorder and it's accompanied by severe stress, fatigue, a constant fatigue that the person feels. Then obesity, eating disorders because people start to eat when they are nervous and anxious, irritable bowel syndrome, and finally a weakened immune system. These are just some of the physical symptoms that have come to light in lieu of the recent researches. But there is still a lot more to be exposed. Constant headaches, feeling of dizziness because your muscles are expanding, like, spending up so much of energy. So you are feeling weak. And because of that, you are having dizziness. Because of your muscle aches, you probably are not going anywhere. You have a lack of physical exercise, because of which you're becoming obese. So it's all basically interlinked. Now, how can you deal with a person who is living with PTSD? This part I will be discussing in my next live session. But for today, if you are suffering from PTSD, I would like you to do the following. First, embrace your daily routines, even if they look mundane to you. People with PTSD, I mean, others will not understand, but those who have faced PTSD know that sometimes even getting up to brush your teeth feels like a task. But do it. Do not let those small everyday things pass you by because they will make you feel better. If not today, someday maybe, but you will get through it. And it is an accomplishment that you are doing so much with the level of problem that you are facing. So even if it is a mundane task like going to the office, going to school, going to the gym, you just don't have the energy. You are having tremendous body ache, you are having a headache, you're feeling dizzy. Try to do as much possible. Try to cover up as much of your daily tasks as possible. Since people who suffer from PTSD also have difficulty remembering the things, I suggest you have an everyday task to-do list and you keep checking them off on a daily basis. So you focus on your time, you focus on your tasks, and you focus on completing them every day. They may seem stupid, they may seem useless, worthless, everything, but trust me, it's not. In the long run, it is going to help you. So please, please, please focus on yourself, focus on your self-care, maintain a time for self-care. It can be reading a novel, watching some TV, going for a walk, going cycling, going on hikes, but indulge in self-care. The importance of self-care has always been undermined, but it is time you take the reins in your own hands and take back your life, right? So that, then ask for help. I understand that you're feeling that no one understands you and they've not experienced what you've been through, and you are probably right. They probably do not understand what you've gone through. But a psychologist or a psychiatrist, basically a medical health professional, will understand. A mental health professional or a medical health professional, you can go to either of them. They will redirect you. I mean, a medical health professional will redirect you to a mental health one if they feel you need counseling or medicines depending on your situation. So ask for help. No one else will understand what you are going through except you yourself, but there are certain people who have been educated and who have certificates that assure you that they know what they are doing when they are trying to help you. So they can help you. But it is your duty to ask for help, and asking for help is winning half the battle. The first part is to understand that you need help, second is asking for help, and third is implementing everything they tell you to. Get support. If you have friends and family members who do understand what you go through, if they are ready to help, please take their help. You don't have to fight this battle alone. This is not a lonely battle to fight. The more support you have, the better you will do in the long run. So get that help. You deserve it. You deserve it for yourself. You deserve to live a good life. Why should you lead a life that's full of misery? where you're thinking every day that it should just end. I mean, hopelessness. What is this life about? Why am I even living? No, you deserve a healthy, fulfilling life. So that then obviously avoid any kind of substance abuse. Substance abuse is never a solution to your problem. It will only aggravate your problem further. So avoid it as much possible. In fact, avoid it completely, not as much possible. That is never the solution. Well, so for this video, I discussed what is PTSD, what are the signs and symptoms, how to identify if someone's suffering from PTSD, how does PTSD affect your mind, body, soul, what are the physical and behavioral symptoms that someone might be suffering from PTSD, and what to do if you realize that you do have PTSD. Now, what I will be discussing in my next live video will be how to help someone who is living with PTSD. How can you be the support system for someone and help them lead a better life? It's not only upon the person who is dealing with PTSD to, put and change their lifestyle to focus on self-care and stuff, but people who are around them can be of major support. And you need to understand what your loved one might be going through if they are facing PTSD, like a mental health issue. And it's nothing to be made fun of. It is a real issue. It is a chronic problem and it's a debilitating condition. So please, please help those who are suffering from PTSD and stay tuned for my next video where I will be discussing how can you help someone lead a more fulfilling life even with PTSD. I mean, some people can combat PTSD, some people find it hard, some people bring it down to levels where they can lead, day-to-day lives in a good manner. But at the end, it all comes down to the support that they have. The more support you can provide that person, the better they will do in the long run, and the faster they will be able to come out of their problem. And even if they don't come out of it completely, they'll at least reach a point where they can, successfully lead a day-to-day life without any issue. So that's about it for this video. I will see you in my next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.